What is up, Rad Potential YouTube? Welcome back to working on the $500 Woods Find Rx8. So we're here at Calvin's house. We're going to yank this engine out today. It's locked up. It's going to be fun to just get it apart, see what's going on. That way in the next few bits we can decide what parts we need and what parts are savable and what we need to find from another car. So we're going to drain the fluid out outside the garage so we don't make a mess in the garage. And then we'll get this engine out pretty quick. So we'll kind of walk you through all the different things you need to take apart to get this engine out in this video and show you those. And kind of give you guys a detailed guide on engine removal. And hopefully when we're taking this one apart, we don't have stuck, rusty stuff. It's really just the engine mount bolts. Otherwise, everything else should be pretty easy. Yeah. So, should go pretty quick for the rotors. It's got a good parking brake with a stuck engine. Alright, so once you get the airbox tray, just a bunch of little 10mm bolts, there's a vacuum line that runs behind it. The battery tray is sitting over here, and if this bolt right here is really rusty, it's a real pain in the butt to get out. We had to take the ECU stuff out to get to that. You want to take the ECU cover off, take your wiring harness and just flip that over here. The one tricky wire that you will forget and probably break or test the tensile strength of is your alternator charging wire. This goes into the main charge harness of the car, not the engine harness. Now the alternator like turn on and all that stuff wiring stays with the engine harness, but just this side stays over here. You'll see this big thick harness, everything should go down that way to the starter. So that'll all come off that side of the engine. Now, if your car has a charged AC system, you can take the compressor off the side of the engine and just let it hang in the engine bay. It does get a little tricky getting the engine out with that in there, but not too bad. Or if you can recharge your system, you can take off the two compressor lines here. They're two 10mm bolts. They pop out. On this side, you need to disconnect the starter wires. There's an oil level sensor down in the middle. The red one is your fuel line. The blue one is actually a vacuum line. It's a vent from the evap solenoid stuff in the back. These pop off real easy. You just kind of push on the red with your thumb. Oh. Or maybe a screwdriver. These are actually in pretty good shape. Mine are wore out. And those will just pop right up. They're little quick disconnects. You can get them mixed up, but you'll know really fast. The red one's in the back when you go to put it back together. There's also some transmission wiring that connects into the engine harness that will disconnect under the car. So once you're to this point and you kind of have this space cleared up here, there's really not a lot of wiring and stuff going into all that. Mass airflow, solenoid wiring, flip that up out of the way. All your coolant lines are here. You want to disconnect all of those, the ones that go forward. I like to take the overflow tank out of here because you can break it really easily, so it's just easy to get it out of the way. Once we go under the car, that's where this is going to get a bit tricky. So we'll pull this front wheel off. In order to get the engine mount out on this side, we have to hold the engine up. The engine mounts will come off the engine left and right before you remove the engine out of the car. The engine mounts are too wide to fit between the frame rails. So the one mount comes off this side, the other mount comes off that side, and then you lift the engine out. Bell housing bolts are pretty straightforward. It is a push style clutch, so you don't have to do what the Rx8's do and like pop the collar off to get the clutch master disconnected. But otherwise they're pretty easy, so this thing should just come right out of here shortly. Disconnect a few wires and intake and everything can come out. I've found that like on my car that I've had apart a bunch, sometimes I'll take the intake manifold off and then disconnect the wiring harness, but it's easier to just leave it all together. Leave all that on there, pull it out as one unit, address your intakes and stuff on the engine stand. So, what do you guys think? Besides that one rusty bolt that stuck us up for a little bit, I think she'll come right apart. Alright guys, so we got the oil cooler lines off, which were a real pain in the butt. Engine mounts are out. You have to take those out the sides. I'll show you once we get it kind of apart. You can see here's an engine mount here. It comes off the side of the engine. You can walk it down the bottom. Same on this side, but this engine mount a little bit bigger. because it fits over the exhaust. Now, our last little rusty struggle, we've got engine is loose, engine mounts are out, and we're stuck on the 3-bolt flange at the back of the header. It's basically rusted together. So we're going to get out air chisel tools, knock this thing apart, pop this thing right out. Alright y'all, we got this thing out. So let me show you how these engine mounts fit, because this will give you a little bit of trouble if you've never done it before. So the engine mount fits in here like this. And basically when you go to take this out, you got to get it off the engine and then rotate it and drop it down. Same on both sides. For us, this exhaust is really stuck. This engine, coolant seal failure 8 years ago, has been sitting, is locked up. So you can disconnect, like I've shown you, that main big wiring harness just comes off the side. You have these wires which run down to your transmission, they run down the top. So this is your neutral safety switch, your reverse lights, and then the downstream O2 sensor. The upstream O2 sensor comes out of this plug right here, which you can reach from the back. There should be hooks on your engine. There to grab it. Flip your ECU wiring over, and it pops right out. We did have a little bit of a struggle with the oil cooler lines that are under here, and then the other oil cooler line, which is down, easier to get to from this fender, which is this one. On the cars that are rusty, they tend to just rust together. Once you get the engine out, your transmission will just sit on that cross member, and you're free to pressure wash and clean and do whatever you need to do to this. So we're going to get this thing stripped down, and then we'll get this engine down to the house, and I'll get it torn down this week, and we'll see what it looks like on the inside, which will be fun. Well guys, it has been a while since we've been in this shop working on a rotary engine in depth, because we've been playing with other toys. The Rx8's engine works great, the yellow car's engine works great, everything's working great. We haven't needed to build an engine in a minute. So we're back from getting Calvin's Rx8 engine out of the car. We did, after we turned the camera off up at his shop, we're able to get this engine freed up and turning over a little bit, but there's definitely a spot in this engine. I don't have my pin in, but you can see it turns a little bit. There's definitely a spot in the engine where it doesn't turn past that, so most likely some rust or some stuff that's gummed in there. No sense in trying to force it through that. We can't, there's a bunch of rust coming out of the exhaust ports. We can't really see in it. We have one 6-port sleeve that's stuck in this. It didn't come out. It actually broke off the intake manifold, so not uncommon on Rx8s to do that. On the S4 and S5 NAs, even a GSLSE engine, the 6-port sleeves, the intake will come off, and then the sleeve can stay stuck in there, and then you have to hammer it out. Versus these, the sleeves are actually mounted to the intake manifold, so kind of makes it a pain in the butt. One tip of the trade, though, is do not take your flywheel off until you get your front hub bolt loose. You might need to chain the flywheel to something to break this loose, or use one of those flywheel stopper gears. But yes, we're ready to tear down an Rx8 engine. Apart from the water pump housing and everything being a part of the front cover, i.e. it's one whole piece, this will pretty much come apart the exact same way as a normal rotary engine would. There's nothing really super special about these until you get to the rotors, aside from really, obviously the housings have filled in exhaust ports here and the 6-port stuff, but that's pretty normal for Mazda to change all that. So anyways, let's get this thing torn down. This is my new truck, which you guys will see in the next few videos after this video, because it wouldn't be a rad potential truck if it wasn't a project. So get stoked for me learning how to be a diesel technician for a little bit. But yes, the elephant in the background, i.e. this giant gray dually truck that literally doesn't fit in the garage. I can't close the garage door. So let's tear this down. You guys have seen on the channel a bunch of times. If you haven't, go check out the other videos of a detailed teardown video on one of these engines. It's not that hard. Pop the flywheel off, pop the front bolt out, take all the tension rods out, strip it all apart, organize your parts. Done. So let's bust this out. It's stuck. If this is your first time ever taking rotary apart, the flywheel bolt, 2 1/8 inch. I think it's a 54 millimeter or something like that. It's a unit. Get you a big socket. Just had to grab my purse. On an Rx8, you've got 4 bolts that are longer than all the rest. They've got little dimples in the top. Alright y'all, here's something we're going to notice right off the bat. So, on the water pump cover, this had a Mazda Reman engine sticker. So, the car must have gotten an engine at some point in its life. Who knows when. Something that's crazy, and this is one of the differences about Rx8 engines, is the side seals are actually tapered from the top to the bottom, i.e. the part that you're seeing right here on the rotor is thicker than the part at the bottom of the side seal that's down in the rotor hitting the spring, okay? So what's crazy to me about this situation is that look at how loose the side seal clearance is. It's going to be a little hard for me to show you this, but there's probably a solid millimeter of side seal clearance right here, which is very loose. So everything seems to be reasonably springy, at least the ones that popped out. That side seal on that side stuck, but we'll continue through pulling this apart. I haven't found the broken corner or the broken coolant seal yet. This side looks pretty decent, and hopefully this housing is not wrecked. So we'll see. We'll see what we see when we get there. But I'm just gonna start bagging all this up. With how loose these are, no sense in trying to put them all back so we know where they go. We can just re-clearance everything with new stuff when we build the engine. I'd say that's where our blown coolant seal was. Look at all that carbon. Terrible. Turn my little blues rock off for y'all, and let me show you this here blown coolant seal. Right here by the spark plug on the hot side, you can see where that coolant seal is all tore up. That has to be where that's leaking. So honestly, this is between the front iron and the housing. Center iron coolant seal looked fine. No tears, no real evidence of it coming through. And honestly, guys, I'm going to clean these housings up. They've got some chatter, but this looks like a good set of Rx8 housings, guys. I am stoked. Look at these housings. No major chrome flake, some baby edge wear, a good resurface on these, and these things will be like $1 million. There's a little chrome flake here, I guess. And there's a little chrome flake at the top on that one. I guess that's a little worrisome, but it looks like maybe 3 mil of edge wear / chrome flake on that, which is not ideal, but not terrible. I've seen housings way worse. Potentially usable, but most likely, if the housings are better in our second backup junkyard engine for the Abandoned in the Forest Rx8, we'll probably use those. But these are not unusable by any means. Alright guys, so that is making a mess, tearing down this engine. Something that's also equally crazy to see. If you've never seen an Rx8 apex seal, Look at how short that is. I'll compare it to a regular 13B apex seal here. So you can literally see how tall a normal old school one is and how short the Rx8 ones are. I'm sure that it has a pretty decent amount of miles on it, but that's a real short apex seal. So with that, guys, that is going to conclude this video. It has since now started to rain. Dump this last bit of coolant out of here. Also, if you're going to tear down your Rx8 engine or any rotary engine for that matter, make sure you leave your front stationary gear with one bolt in there, otherwise it falls out when you flip it over. Oh man! That bearing is wasted! What's the front of the E-shaft look like? E-shaft looks okay. Honestly, that could have played a part in the failure here too. This bearing's completely toast. I didn't even really look at the rotor bearings. That rear stationary gear bearing's not terrible. Just check the rotor bearings real quick. The rotor bearings aren't too bad. You know, it could have spun some of that bearing material out and then pushed that around in the front housing and helped ruin everything. So, you never know. But with that, guys, honestly, it's way better than I expected. One of these Rx8 engines, just any rotary engine for that matter, that's been sitting for a long time, especially one that has a blown coolant seal and has been sitting for a long time. I've seen these engines come apart that literally look like they've been under the ocean with the Titanic for years and years. Everything is rusted together. Everything is ruined. And honestly, this one is not that bad. I mean, is it stuff that, like, say if it was a customer coming to me to get an engine rebuild, I would probably recommend that we find new housings, or at least show them and explain to them what could potentially happen. I mean, with that amount of edge wear, you're looking at, you know, maybe a 50,000 mile motor before it's got to come back apart or it's going to get tired. You know, you're not going to have a 100,000, 120,000 mile rebuild with edge wear like that, with the chrome plate being 3 mil. It's going to grow rapidly once you start driving it. I'm sure I can get all these rotors and stuff, get all the seals out of them. I've got some tips and tricks and stuff for cleaning them. I think I've uploaded a video about cleaning rotors, but you guys should definitely go see if I have. I'm pretty sure I did. But they're pretty easy to clean. I've got a little bucket that I use and I soak them in evapor rust when they're this gnarly, and that generally frees up all the seals. You can tap on them with like a screwdriver handle and get the seals out. So with that, guys, I apologize that the videos in this series are very sporadic, but at the same time, we're making progress on the car. We're getting stuff done. We needed to see if this engine was healthy. We got to see if that other engine is healthy so we can kind of put together a parts list as to what we're going to order to freshen this car up and hopefully get it back on the road here soon. It would be dope to get this thing to the tail of the dragon next spring. So with that, guys, thank you guys very much for watching. Get stoked for more Rx8 stuff coming up. We'll get stacking on these engines-ish. It might be a little while before the next one comes out. But we're building a truck. I'm sorry, it's not a rotary, but rotaries break, and I need a truck, so we're building a truck. We'll see you guys in the next one. Keep it rad. Thanks for watching. Comment below with any questions. Comment below with any specific Rx8 engine rebuild questions. I will go over the differences in this engine from the rest, and I'll make a video specifically to that in the future. But let me know what your questions are. Comment your experience with the Rx8 engines and stuff if you've rebuilt one yourself. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Letty, do we need a bigger garage or a bigger truck? I don't know what this means, but jump. Let's go. Jump. Jump. Bigger garage. Yeah. Smaller truck, bigger garage. Sneak peek, guys. It's not a gray truck. It's actually a red truck. Letty, don't jump in there. And it ran and drove itself in here. But as you can see, LB7 problems.